World Cup disrupting cities across the United States. How are those American soccer expansion teams faring a month into the season? And would you be okay if your club stole another city's MLS team? That and more on Wednesday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Good morning. How you doing? My name is Robert Kerr. He is Jason Davis, and you found your way to the show that dots the map of the ever-changing American soccer landscape. Welcome, my men. How you feeling, partner?
I'm good. Shout out to the Ultras this morning. Everybody in the chat already. Frederick is here. I Play French Horn is here. John is here. Armando is here. CD Gobjex, as Rob likes to say,
I love him.
is here. Our guy Seneca Rocker Dub V is here. I've got Mr. Bob dropping a gift membership already this morning. Thank you, Bob. It makes me feel a little bit better, Bob. You might be able to tell in my voice. I have picked up the crud that has come from the 5-year-old who got it out in the world somewhere, probably at preschool. Man, he did not want to go this morning. Your guy Jason is fighting through it. I'm playing hurt, but I'm here. Shout out to a homeless shoe as well. And reminder that we're still celebrating the fact that Rob ain't going anywhere. We thought Rob Kerr was going to have to go and get a real job. Well, he is getting a real job. We thought he was going to get a real job that was going to take him away from Morning Kickaround, but he saved the day. He did that himself. Let's another round of applause for Mr. Kerr, first and foremost.
I've come to think of it as a late injury time equalizer. So I found a way to rescue a point, a very much needed point before the point of no return. The show was within hours of changing.
You're probably not going to like this, but does that make you the oldie gunner of Morning Kickaround? You're probably not going to like it, and I think you're going to like it. You're a Liverpool fan. You can't possibly like. You got a Liverpool name for me? Give me a name from Liverpool's past who you would bring off the bench to save the day. Who was that guy?
Oh, I would do the guy who scored the Divock Origi.
Divock Origi is a good shot. Okay, that's a good shot. You're the Divock Origi of Morning Kickaround. Anybody has any suggestions for who Rob is most like when it comes to, getting that late goal that we needed to save the day? Throw that in the chat.
Oh yeah, and there's plenty over the years, of course, but yeah, Divock Origi. My pickup alter ego is a rec level John Joe Shelby, if that helps put together some context.
Way too much hair for that. Way too much hair for a John Joe Shelby.
It's more the propensity you're is equally as likely to score an absolute rocket blast into the top 90 as like pass to the wrong team and they score. Like it's the plus minus element of it. Capable of a nightmare and a home run all at the same time.
Okay.
But we've got plenty on the show. And Mr. Bob is being generous as ever. Thank you, Mr. Bob.
Can everybody follow Mr. Bob's example? He's supporting the show. We love that.
He's doing the heavy lifting. He's going to need a bacchiotomy with all this carrying.
Your guys are out here trying to put together the equipment list for Rhode Island for Pawtucket. And every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. Clint Dempsey staving off relegation for Fulham. Do you want to be Clint Dempsey?
I'd say that's an elevation. I would love that. He's my favorite American player. We haven't really talked about it on the show, but I'm curious. I am genuinely curious to watch that Paramount movie about him. And I'm usually, those are kind of a little bit self-serving. I mean, there's a little caveat that, they're doing it about one of their hosts, but he's one of my American favorite players. So I'll watch it regardless.
Yeah, he's gonna. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be fun. You don't know where I'm from, dog. I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
We
Isn't
got
that what he said to Micah Richards? I think is the quote.
We got a new ultra. Yeah, that's what he said to Micah Richards. TSU Kone 620 is in the building as an ultra, so we congratulate that person for joining up. B like TSU Kone 620. The other bit of news, the other bit of housekeeping before we dive in, Rob, and our first subject is we do have a plan for a fourth topic today. We have 3 topics on tap. We got a plan for a fourth topic, but we need your help. Vote in the poll that is currently in the chat. Do you want us to talk about the Colorado Rapids potentially rebranding, refreshing their brand, or do you want us to talk about the Concacaf Champions Cup? 2 matches last night, 2 matches tonight.
Yep, that is what you got to do. Vote for our hot topic of the day. And then also another thing that we've done is hype your match for a meager fee. me and Jason will hype up your match. If you got your home opener, we are 2 for 2. I'll preface that. We are 2 for 2. Flint City Bucks won the first one, and then New Mexico United won their home opener after it was hyped on this very show.
We are lucky people around here. Absolutely. Hype your match on Morning Kickaround.
Yeah, reach out morningkickaround@gmail.com to get the entry form, to get cursory information and hype up your match as best we can. Also, the Hoodless mug and Mr. Bob mug can be found at the Morning Kickaround merchandise page. You can find that on the YouTube, on the tab that goes across, and then on fourth wall. But here we go. You talking about Pawtucket and making our equipment list to bring a college game day style show from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. We're going to be working with them to do it from inside the stadium, hopefully.
We need some people to start playing. We are a month out. Holy mother of, we are a month out from Pawtucket. That's incredible. If you're going to be in Pawtucket, or you know somebody's going to be in Pawtucket, we need signs. We need signs in the background. We didn't pull that off in Albuquerque. We were brand new to the scene. Nobody knew who we were. Mr. Bob came up and gave me his book, and it was a brilliant moment, but nobody knew who we were. We need people holding up Dot the Map signs, Clank the Clanger signs, whatever else you can think of. MK Ultras represent, and tell your friends.
Yeah, I got to find someone holding a 10-15, that Bible verse of that Texas team in the League for Clubs. It's how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. So maybe that's the Dot the Map. John 3:16 equivalent is a 10-15 from Romans 10:15. Apparently, but I didn't realize. I mean, I guess it is a holy time of year. Didn't realize I was going to be quoting Bible verses, but that would be fun. That would be amazing if there were signs in the background and, elevated that college game day style feel. But we just got the itinerary. I'm going to be doing some great tourism stuff while Jason does his show from there. And then, we're going to be corralling together. Want to meet as many MK Ultras out there and pepper the team with messages of adulation about us, so everyone gets really excited, and can't wait to see familiar faces. Like Jason said, it was great to meet some familiar faces when we were out in New Mexico, but we know a lot more people now. That's 6-9 months ago now, and there's been a lot of growth since then.
It's a while back. Okay, all right. As shout out to Andrew for becoming an Ultra. Support the show, become an Ultra, get access to all the bonus stuff in the Discord. What we got? Let's go.
All right, don't forget about the hot topic. The topics are, we're going to talk about Concacaf Champions Cup comeback or the Colorado Rapids rebrand. Get in to the poll now for that, but we got plenty to talk about. Let's go hot topics, or no, let's go long balls here on Wednesday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Our first topic of the day is a World Cup topic, so it is time for me to let you know that Oakland County FC is now bringing you the World Cup coverage on this show, and they are celebrating 10 years of summer soccer, of purple passion in Southeast Michigan in 2026. The schedule and tickets on sale now, and if you go to OCFC's Instagram page, you can enter in a all expenses trip, behind the scenes trip to Cary, North Carolina for the TST tournament. And
wow.
Following them on Instagram, there's been quite a list of pros and stuff. And there's even a Pogba.
There's a Pogba. You buried the lead. There's a Pogba playing for Oakland County at the TST. That is a wild bit of news. American soccer stays weird.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So look up Oakland County FC on Instagram for your chance. You could even rub shoulders with Paul Pogba if he decides to come and pop in there. I've heard there's an outside chance.
Okay, just there to support his brother. It's Florentine Pogba that's going to play, right?
It's the one that they still are in communication with each other. I know there's a lot of Pogba brothers.
It's not the trade one. It's the good brother. It's the one who played in Atlanta. He played in Atlanta for Atlanta United. Yes,
Florentine. Yeah, exciting times. Yeah, like you said, a sentence I never thought I'd say, but there you go, and you have a chance to win those sweepstakes. There's about a week left to enter into that sweepstakes. All right, to the World Cup news. There's been significant impact, or there will be, for host cities across the United States when the World Cup is on. We got a couple big ones, but we're going to start with Penn Station, probably the busiest rail hub in North America, or the United States, is going to be closing to the public for 4-hour windows on matches out at MetLife Stadium. Just a wild impact on the everyday person. Once again, hey, Jason.
All right, so this is me relying a little bit on a quick search and what Google is giving me via artificial intelligence. Okay, so, somebody wants to double check my work here, feel free. But Penn Station, not just rail, Rob, buses, lots and lots of buses, 600,000 passengers per day go through Penn Station. It's the busiest transportation hub in America. And FIFA's like, yeah, you got to shut that down for 4 hours before matches. You can't be operating all these other trains and things. You just gotta be about us and getting our people out to MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. And this is from CBSNews.com. MetLife Stadium will host 8 World Cup matches, including the final in July, but soccer fans will have to rely on mass transit because there won't be any parking. You can't go park MetLife Stadium. Oh, by the way, I also saw a note. People are upset that there's not going to be any tailgating at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, which to me, okay, I kind of get it. Tailgating is, it's not really something we attach to soccer, but there are tailgating cultures in soccer in America. The tailgate in DC for years and years and years out of Varsity Stadium was incredible. And I think it was Lot 8 is where they held that tailgate out there in DC. I went a bunch of times, Barra Brava, La Norte, Screaming Eagles. And so we're not doing that. FIFA's like, no, you can't have your culture because your culture's not soccer-y enough for us. Oh, and by the way, also we're going to shut down Penn Station for 4 hours so that we can just get people out to New Jersey for this. Regular New Jersey transit customers are already concerned. I love this phrase, CBSNews.com. That's going to be a pain in my butt. That's what I think, Jeff Gallup said.
Oh, they put a name on the quote. It wasn't just fan or...
My man Jeff Gallup was like, that's going to be a pain in my butt. And he's probably right. I mean, it's the best way to say it, Jeff. I agree with you 100%.
Do you think they edited Jeff on that quote? Do you think he said maybe the ASS word and they softened it a little bit?
He is from New Jersey. They say possible. But? He could have said something slightly more risque and something slightly less polite. And they were like, oh, let's just change it to butt for Jeff. Okay. Little Ferry resident Michael Carter Jr. said it's going to be quite a nightmare. I can only hope that they provide a better plan or better commute for the commuters that are paying the daily rates. So this is not great. There are people saying it's going to be necessary because of the security out at MetLife Stadium. So this is one of the knockout effects of the World Cup. And by the way, we're talking about transit pretty much all over the country, wherever these games are happening, Rob. I know there's stuff with the Boston Stadium, which is not in Boston, there's also some news out of Massachusetts.
Yeah, there's news out of Massachusetts where the service from Boston to Foxborough, the stadium itself, which usually costs $17.50 round trip, will cost $80 on match days at Foxborough Stadium, which is another outrageous gouging. But you said there's some reason why there might be that Boston trying to recoup some costs, but another massive impact on people trying to go out there.
Yeah, the MBTA, which is the Metro Boston Transit Authority, they are saying that this is basically because we had to invest $35 million in upgrading service to Foxborough because of the World Cup. And, I guess if you were a World Cup fan already paying thousands of dollars for tickets potentially, then this is going to be just kind of feel like they're piling on. At the same time, there are tourist taxes in pretty much every place that has tourists, right? You go and book a hotel room, you ain't paying local prices, you're paying tourist prices because you're from out of town. And hey, you're coming in and using our services. And while we're happy to have your money, that's a strain on our town, our city, our community. I don't know. This one doesn't rub me as wrong as what FIFA is doing, trying to extract money from fans.
Well, that's the main bad guy in the room, right? It's FIFA, and they're trying to recoup these costs from taxpayer money. And so I got to say that we got to get some sort of a catchphrase or a mantra for what the city council people did in Foxborough to stand up to FIFA and not foot the bill. Like, we got to come up with a catchy phrase like "pull a Foxborough" or something like that, because what these two side-by-side cases are with the security costs that they refuse to pay in Foxborough, and then this with the transport authority in Boston, it's the small town guys said no in a situation, obviously, that the folks in Boston went ahead with.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should. Again, the fact that FIFA extracts and does not actually put anything in is extremely distressing if you have any sense at all of what burden is on the communities that want to host games. I know that, Rob, you shared in our Slack that we use to plan the show that there are plans for what the Bay Area is going to do their watch parties. I think they got their fan fest kind of planned out a little bit. We've heard the stories about the fan fest in Jersey. At first it was going to be free, then it was going to be $10, then it was canceled. There will be other fan fests. I look, this is going to be, for lack of a better way of describing it, a DIY World Cup. Now, FIFA's going to go and do their fancy show, and they're going to sell tickets for thousands of dollars, and maybe they sell them all or maybe they don't. We certainly know that there are games that have higher demand than others, and whatever. You kind of have to just, and I know there's more controversy on tickets, which we'll get to, but you're kind of just, if you're not going, let them have it. Like, whatever, F FIFA. They're terrible. We don't like them. But I like the soccer, and I want to make peace with watching the games. So where do you do that? You do that at, if there's a free fan festival, go, sure. But also just like find the restaurant for the country that's playing. Like, find a restaurant that is owned and operated by people from a country playing in a World Cup match. And I'll tell you will have a blast. You will have a blast watching the World Cup. Or look, again, people probably already have a lot of this going on. I can throw a rock and probably hit a restaurant that for 12 or 15 different countries playing in the World Cup this summer. Like, they're going to be events. People are going to gather. There are going to be exciting things to participate in. And it's probably better to avoid FIFA at all costs.
Isn't that another hollowing out of the middle? Like, there's going to be the big fancy corporate shindigs, and then there's going to be, like you said, a DIY approach. I mean, for example, right here, we're in the Oakland County FC sponsored segment. I'll say, there's going to be a watch party. I pitched a whole tour of going to various cities across Oakland County, which is a big place, but we're definitely going to have some at some sponsored locations, and hopefully a little bit bigger than that. But to your point, people are going to do their own things at a certain point. And then maybe you have your favorite watch party bar. I'm thinking about, at least for some games, putting a projector on the garage and having folks out there. So definitely opportunity for DIY approach to this.
I just found out the best soccer bar in America is maybe 20 minutes from my house. I've been there several times. It's a pretty good soccer bar. I was a little surprised to hear it named the best soccer bar in America. And
Is that a list from a guy that went to like 10?
No, it's a thing that a certain media company that exists in America now covering.
Is it a
soccer.
rights holding company?
No, it was founded by a couple of gentlemen who hail from the land of Rob Kerr, actually. So that they decided to do a best soccer bar in America. It's cheap heat. I mean, it was very smart on their part to make this official, the best soccer bar in America contest. But yeah, every year they hold the contest, people vote. And this year, Four Courts in Arlington, Virginia won the title. So shout out to Four Courts, I guess. We maybe invite Morning Kickaround out there. I know you're getting that Men in Blazers love, but Morning Kickaround's okay too.
Yeah, I love this show, but I've only been to soccer bars in a handful of cities, and there's some great ones out there, and that would be a great thing to add to the list. We, visiting stadiums and whatnot, but visiting, doing a great soccer bar tour would be awesome.
Real quick, because it got brought up. Vienna and have not been there to watch soccer. Have been there to buy kegs when I was maybe too young to buy them. Let's quickly move on. Also,
shout out Globe Pub in Chicago.
Globe Pub. I have a Globe Pub book somewhere in my office here when I visited the Globe Pub years ago.
Man, the old days of social soccer and going to the Globe afterwards. That's glory days right there.
There's one in Portland, Oregon I visited that has a hanging tagging Wayne Rooney doing a bicycle kick, which is very cool. I can't remember the name of that. Sort of like authentic English food. So anyway, sorry, we're naming soccer pubs now. We got more more World Cup news.
More World Cup news. Actually, it's funny you were talking about the names of cities and, foreigners being a little bit put out that, like the Texas Stadium or the Dallas Stadium isn't in Dallas and whatnot. And I saw a story. I was trying to find it up real quick, but apparently the Japan either tourism board or the Football Association is petitioning the FIFA to correct the names of the cities because they were upset that at the inaccuracies, the false portrayals of where the games were.
Yeah, there's a whole story at The Athletic about fans saying that they feel like they've been scammed. And look, it's easy for us as American soccer fans. I mean, the thing I will give Gianni Infantino credit for is when he said that Americans are used to high prices, he wasn't wrong. He's an asshole for using it to FIFA's benefit because we hate it. But he's not wrong that we're sort of accustomed, normalized to high prices for our sporting events and for dynamic pricing and all that stuff, right? We are. And what I think a lot of us are doing, we just went through this exercise. We went through that thing that's like, well, I'm not going to go to games, but I'm still going to engage with the World Cup. And I live here, right? And I know the magic of America is there will be people celebrating the World Cup from cultures across the spectrum in my country. And if you live in a major metropolitan area, you're going to have so many options. Even a reasonable sized city has a lot of options for engaging in fans who are going to be very excited to watch the World Cup. So we can do that. People who are coming from abroad, who do want to be in the country of the World Cup, who want to experience that World Cup firsthand, who want to follow their team, all those people decked out in orange to follow the Netherlands. The Tartan Army is coming, Rob. Did you know the Tartan Army is invading America? They're coming. Are you ready? Those people, they're not used to this, right? They're not paying thousands of dollars to go see Rangers. So when they show up and I got to pay thousands of dollars for my tickets and I got to pay thousands of dollars for my hotel room. Oh, and also that hotel room is 45 miles from the stadium. What are you talking about right now? Like, that is blowing minds, and I feel for those people.
Yeah, I mean, that harkens back to the tailgating thing, because, I mean, a lot of American stadiums, why do we tailgate? Because we have to drive out of the city centers to get to them, but then we want to experience the culture together and the bonding of the shared experience that is going to a game. And so stripping that, the people from out of the country probably are like, I want to, be right there and have the walk to the game, the drink at the bar and the walk to the game is one of the beautiful things in life. And then, an American substitute to that is, parking in the massive parking lot, hanging out with all the people around you, having fun and a drink, and then walking into the stadium together. And where is the communal experience here in all this? I mean, obviously, once you get in there, I'm sure it's great, but you're going to have some ad breaks in the halves now, which, takes away from that group experience. And there's probably we'll see what happens with the VAR and how that's executed and if there's any delays there. But there's other news to get to today. So we'll wrap this up by saying Oakland County FC, thank you for sponsoring World Cup news. We are celebrating Oakland County FC's 10th year on the field in Southeast Michigan. Bleeding Purple. Tickets available now. And also visit the Instagram page for Oakland County FC to enter the sweepstakes for an all-expenses behind-the-scenes trip to Cary, North Carolina to the TST. There's about a week more to enter that. All right, let's take a sip of coffee and come back with another story, checking in with those expansion teams across the United States. Welcome back in Morning Kickaround. About a month into the 2026 season, we're taking this time to check in with the plethora of expansion teams across the United States, especially in the USL. Some faring well, some faring not, some with some short-term problems, some with some longer-term problems. So I think let's start in the USL Championship expansion side, Jacksonville. A couple things going on there. Why don't you take us away? There's at least 3 bullet points to check in with them in their early goings of a USL Championship side.
Well, I mean, I know about what I have seen is that they have angered some people over policies regarding away fans, with a statement about what away fans are and are not allowed to do there in Jacksonville. And I think, what do we got? No flags, no drums, no banners. Away supporters will be placed in a designated section when available. Each traveling, last time there was lots of sections available for Sporting Jackson. I'm just going to say each traveling group must provide one primary point of contact. They will provide a match day contact, et cetera, et cetera. No flags or banners, no drums or musical instruments of any kind. No smoke, which is league policy, not necessarily Sporting Jack's policy. So yeah. I understand. But that thing about the banners and the flags and all of that, that seems unnecessarily restrictive, right? That does feel as though you are squashing any vibrant atmosphere that might come from traveling support. And man, maybe this is a reaction to a problem of away supporters are louder in Jacksonville than home supporters. Maybe that's a thing here.
Yeah, I saw underneath this story when it came across my desk that some people were speaking possibly factually that this was reaction to the Tampa Bay Rowdies taking over Jacksonville when they had their Open Cup game. But I'd be interested if there's any Tampa Bay Rowdies people in the mix to let us know. Was it that you were louder than them? Was there anyone out of hand that would cause a crackdown? And there is a little bit of a history of owners from different sports not necessarily understanding the away support and how
that's a problem. I don't know that that's what's going on here. I don't know. Anyway, there are some responses over on the USL subreddit that talks about people that went to Jacksonville from Tampa that say they were originally told that those items were allowed, the flags, the banners, the drums, and then there was a resignation at Sporting Jacksonville. The president resigned the week before the game, and the permitting, quote unquote, permitting ticket rep, meaning their point of contact, left at the same time. They say that Sporting did allow everything but the smoke. Again, that's premises, usually league policy, depending on, Sporting Jackson was playing in a college sports venue. I'm pretty sure that the college gets to make some rules too. Says that the staff was fine. There were no issues at all. But again, maybe this is just the growing pains of a young club. Like, we should give some grace here for a young club having to figure these things out on the fly. But at the same time, and we've seen it with some clubs, especially because we have, at least in the very early stages, and I don't want to get out too far ahead of this, but we've seen what AC Boise has done. And there's almost universal praise for what AC Boise has done, except for their camera angle issue with their broadcast. And so when you see a club that's not getting it right, you go, well, what? Look over there. Look at what they did over there. Why aren't you doing the exact same thing? But this stuff is hard if you don't have the experience. And honestly, part of this is a lot of these clubs, and this comes back to that tension between, do we want clubs at any cost? Meaning, even if they're not really super professional to begin with, we just want clubs to get something going so we can build it? Or do we want it to be almost entirely, totally baked before it steps on the field? Because if you want the second one, that's dinero, my friend. You need a lot of cash to get the right people in place to make all that stuff work, especially in a place where the cost of living is say, higher than it is in Boise, Idaho, for example.
Yeah, living expenses definitely comes into a part when it gets at this level. But yeah, you're right. Give some grace. Brand new entities, brand new to the situation. And, it's an ever-changing American soccer landscape. But, speaking with the Boise folks, yeah, they did have that run-in time that not a lot of these new expansion sides are utilizing. He said that they've been working like full time for 3 years, did Brad, I think, on the show on Monday. But when we were working our way through that conversation, and when you look at Jacksonville, it did seem that, they have the grand plans for, a whole real estate district that includes a very flashy, I remember from the renderings, very flashy stadium. And it's like, should they have pushed out until that was more the reality and have a better first impression? Because the first game, we noted on here that they were giving away tickets to fill the stands on that opening game, and then And then since then, there's been plenty of open seats there. I think there's definitely some work to be done, and in stifling some atmosphere. Jacksonville has a women's team. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, they haven't. Sorry, I thought you were reading it already. Jacksonville has a women's team with huge crowds, so they're not new to the game. Right? They have a USL women's team.
Oh,
I think it's a.
Forgive me.
I think that's they had. Scred can let me know. I think that's a W League team. But continue, Rob. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what's going on in Jacksonville. So we'll see how they fare in the USL Championship. We touched on it a little bit, but let's move to USL 1 that had many expansion teams going into the 2026 season. So AC Boise, we touched on, they've done really well so far. They've had even results on the field, but like you said, just about every comment and interaction we've had seems universally positive outside of the camera angle there for the main broadcast. And then Jenny putting in the chat, correcting us, Sporting Jacks USL Super League team up, and Bill on top of it as well. So yeah, so not completely new, but definitely new to the USL Championship are Jacksonville. But moving along in USL 1, we touched on Boise, but Corpus Christi, another expansion side, going from the USL 2 to the USL 1, and they've had a little bit of a bumpy start on the field, and then they had a stadium delay as well.
Yeah, the stadium delay is very disappointing. It does mean that you got out ahead of things a little bit. You maybe got a little too anxious and excited and maybe bit off more than you could chew. Again, I want to give some grace here. I want to give some leeway to grow. I mean, I don't know if you're going to talk about Fort Wayne. We put Fort Wayne on the list, but this thing of like figuring out how to level up your stadium to meet the standard of professional soccer is a big deal. Now, we did talk to some people down in Corpus Christi. I think there were some questions, and I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here, so hopefully I won't upset anybody in Corpus Christi, but I think there were some questions about whether or not the ownership down there was sort of ready for this, whether the money behind the club, because look, it's no shame to say, well, I don't have millions of dollars to throw at a soccer team. I've only got a little bit of millions or whatever it is. I've only got a couple million and I need 10. So sometimes, that's where extra support comes in. It's why Detroit City had to add ownership to get to where they are, because the guys that started that club were not going to be able to pay for the next phase of the development of the club. And it's not as though you're ever bringing in enough money to level up. You've got to level up first, and then the revenue comes in behind. At least you hope you get close to your expenses. So that is kind of what I'm thinking about Corpus Christi. I'm reserving judgment, Rob, but I have not been impressed. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah, I sure hope they get there in the end. But yeah, talking about that, having the ability and the resources to be able to go slowly and thoroughly and thoughtfully and fully baked into when you step into the professional realm. We'll see how that turns out. I hope they get there. But you mentioned Fort Wayne. They're in a similar situation where they haven't delayed, but they've definitely mentioned a soft open to the home season. So Fort Wayne has been on the road for their first month as a pro team on other side, moving from USL 2 to USL 1. And they their home opener is set for the 2nd of May. And we've talked to people from Fort Wayne in and around saying that crews are working around the clock to finish that brand new soccer specific stadium. And the CEO is on like local news saying, it might be a soft launch. So maybe there'll be a soccer field, but incomplete stands at that point. But another team, mixed results, but they have a very young squad there. But did they overpromise? We'll see.
Well, I mean, there are things you cannot. So I get in trouble with this with my wife on a regular basis to give you an insight into Jason's life.
Jason in the doghouse is a thing?
No, not like that. But I am a person who thinks through potential hiccups. I'm a person, not a worst case scenario person. I reject that label. I am not a worst case scenario person. I am a practical person when it comes to thinking through how something might work. And when I start laying on the table potential pitfalls, problems, delays, issues, workloads, whatever it might be for things that sometimes come my way, I get accused of being overly negative. Why aren't you supporting me? I am supporting you. I want to do it. I just want to make sure it works. So we have to think through all those things that might go wrong. If you're not prepared for the shit that might go wrong, excuse my language, you're not going to succeed. And I don't think that's what's happening in Fort Wayne. But you have to, and I guess that only goes so far, right? If you are trying to launch and you have a deadline because the season starts when the season starts, and are you pushing back a full year, right? Those are your options. Rush to get it done on the timeline when the season starts, when you say you want to launch, or delay. We've had clubs delay. Like, to the credit of some clubs, they recognized, we're not ready. We're not even close to ready. We've got to pause. We've got to wait. Let's push this back. And then we are critical of those decisions often. We take them as failure. But actually, if you think about it, it's much smarter to delay a full year and make sure you're ready than to rush into something and find out, this is bad. And now we've wasted our first impression. And now we have a problem clawing back respect from the community that was all excited and we promised something and then we didn't deliver. I think that's an issue for some of these clubs.
Yeah, you only get one first date, as they say. Looking at the table, noting where these expansion sides are. In its second season in existence, FC Naples is at the top of the table in USL 1 after 5 games, but a little bit uneven. Some teams have played as few as 2 games, so a little bit of an uneven table there. But the other expansion sides, AC Boise is 1-1-1 across their first 3 matches. Sarasota Paradise, another expansion side down in Florida, they've actually started decently well, getting a couple points here with 1 win and a draw, and taking the 2 L's there with 4 points after 4 games. So Corpus Christi, they've started off life a little bit trickier, just picking up a couple points. They're sitting on 2. And in Fort Wayne, we're talking about their stadium timeline and the youth of their side, and they're at the bottom of the USL League 1 table with just a solitary point, but a tough start to life for them, doing it all on the road.
It is okay. Right. And again, they made that choice. We want to build our stadium. We know we need some springtime to finish it, so we're going to start on the road. It's going to be difficult. It is possible, and it takes some massaging of the message, and you have to be very smart about it. And, if anybody wants to pick my brain, I'm free for a consultation. I don't know that I'm an expert necessarily, but I've seen enough of these scenarios where you can sell the idea of like, okay, guys, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be ours, right? And the fans, the supporters, the community can buy in. And if you give people the idea that they are contributing to the building out of the proper soccer club that everybody wants in town, then you can do that. But again, don't overpromise. Don't leave them out on information. Don't hide behind press releases. You either deliver what you promise, or again, you tell people, all right, guys, this is going to be a work in progress. Jump on board. Let's all go do this together.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach indeed. And I think that might be what's happening or may need to happen at their final expansion side that we haven't mentioned just yet. Sitting in 7th, they've had back-to-back wins, though. The New York Cosmos, 6 points after 5 games, and they've had some betting in issues. They've been reaching out to the local community with ticket availability. I'll still have to see it, but one of our dedicated MK Ultras, Soccer Zombie Tom, his latest video is about his trip out to Patterson, New Jersey, to visit the Cosmos. So a mixed bag, I'd say, for the 2026 expansion sides.
Yeah. And look, and again, it's a balance. Fully acknowledge that you sometimes have to jump in and just try, because you don't know what's going to come at you until you're in it, right? You can't sit there and go, well, everything's going to go wrong, and then not take your first step. It's a balance. Be aware of potential pitfalls. Outline those so that you can be ready for them, but don't let them cow you to the point that you don't try. So, look, we are supportive of all of these clubs trying to make it work.
Yeah, we definitely want as many dots on the map as possible. And thank you for joining us here on this journey to dot the map of the ever-changing American soccer landscape. And you guys have some input on today's content. Can we check in on our hot topic-o-meter?
Yeah, it just happened a couple of minutes ago. We're up to 46 votes. If you haven't voted already, there's a poll in the chat. What topic should we cover? Should it be the Concacaf Champions Cup, or should it be Colorado rebranding, announcing that they're going to refresh their brand? Right now, Concacaf Champions Cup, 52% to 48%. We've got a divided populace voting public out there, Rob.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see how it turns out. Get your votes in to decide our fourth topic on the Hot Topic segment in the show. So let's move along, and we're going to move to our next segment of Wednesday's Morning Kickaround episode. Let's go big question here on the show. Let's go. Welcome, man. Big question here on Morning Kickaround. And say you are a soccer supporter in a lower league in the United States, and your opportunity came to be to get to the top level in United States soccer, get an MLS franchise. Your team is moving on up to the top level, but it comes at the expense of another city and another group of supporters losing their MLS franchise. How do you feel and what do you do?
Yeah, this is an American sports question. We are taking it and turning it to soccer because we have a potential example of this, and one that has prompted Ryan Hodek over at Quail City Soccer to write about it from a Sacramento, California perspective, because Sacramento has wanted to be in Major League Soccer, since the days of yore, 2012. I mean, we're going back a ways when Sacramento kicked off the idea of, hey, we're going to be an MLS town. They've just announced that expansion on their stadium plan. They've got the big ownership group and the local tribe. They've got plans, right? And there is absolutely this idea that those stadium plans are meant as bait, right? As a way to attract Major League Soccer. And this comes at a moment when there is one team in particular in MLS that is in a very dicey situation with their stadium and their locality, and that's the Vancouver Whitecaps. They are very good on the field, but they got problems. They don't own BC Place. They don't control a lot of the revenue. They had to work out a deal last minute just to be able to play there in 2026. They don't have a stadium plan lined up, even though the mayor has said that they are interested in trying to figure that out for the Caps. So could the Caps be relocated, and could it be to Sacramento? And if you are a Sacramento Republic fan, how should you feel about that? And I immediately think about people from Baltimore, hardcore, diehard Ravens fans who had to make peace, some of them too young to remember the Colts, but had to make peace with the fact that their team got stolen from them by Indianapolis. And then years later, was that not even 15 years later, a team gets stolen from Cleveland to move to Baltimore because Art Modell is that guy. And I don't think they think about it anymore, Rob. I really don't. I really don't think Baltimore fans have any compunction about how that all went down because they love their team so much.
And I think with the Americanization, I don't think Baltimore gave two hoots about it from the get-go, to be honest. Like, I remember the 0-2 Super Bowl run. I don't remember, like, anyone going, well, what about
they were good almost immediately, and that certainly made a difference. And like, there was a town starved for football, something to call their own. If you know anything about the Baltimore, D.C. metropolitan area, you know that Baltimore people were never going to jump on board with a Washington team. That was absolutely not going to happen. You have Philly up north. Definitely not going to happen. So they were left out in the cold. And so when they got their team, they were like, oh, yeah, of course, this is great. Now, Sacramento has a soccer team. They do. They just don't have an MLS team.
Right.
So this, I think, is a little bit different. And we've seen soccer fans have to figure out how to feel about big, bad MLS coming to town or threatening potentially to change the complexion of their soccer culture. You're in the backyard of one of those places in Detroit, where Detroit City, there are hardcore, diehard Detroit City FC fans who go all the way back to Cass Tech, who will tell you, not in a million years. The signs are still up at Hamtramck. We don't normally curse on this show, but they say FMLS, and they believe it, right? Now, they've had to make peace with USL, but if MLS came to town one day, I mean, if obviously it would be terrible if they consumed Detroit City and like Detroit City went away and some other new MLS team was in Detroit. Then everybody knows how to feel if you're a Detroit City fan.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one. But in this case, again, like, and by the way, isn't Sacramento right now hosting a Major League Baseball team that is being stolen from Oakland, California? Like, they're having to make peace with. I don't know how Sacramentans feel about that. That's a wild situation.
That's a mental and emotional gymnastics. I mean, like, you're gonna go to a ball park, a ball game where they're like essentially like slumming it in between, their jump to Las Vegas. And I think going back to the Vancouver, and the reason why there is bait out there is because then we see a report saying that Sacramento, Las Vegas, Detroit, and another city were all part of the dangle. Was it maybe even Milwaukee? Like there was definitely some bait out there for a number of different cities to keep that going. And almost in major leagues, they used Las Vegas as bait in the NFL forever, as like, if you don't give us X, we're moving there. There's always that kind of that destination. And so now that puts the pressure on Vancouver to force their way over the line, and it also makes mayors or club owners get real thirsty, possibly in other places across the United States.
Yeah, it's not nice. And anybody who knows my work and my old radio show, which is called the United States of Soccer and focused specifically on American soccer over on SiriusXM, when the whole Anthony Precourt wants to move the Columbus Crew erupted, I very quickly through my show became adamant that you cannot steal the Columbus Crew from Columbus if you want to be different. Maybe MLS doesn't want to be different. I mean, I certainly think that we have people watching the show right now who would say, MLS doesn't want to be different. They want to be the NFL. But they had sold themselves as having soccer's a different culture, soccer's a different community. How many times have we talked about the way that MLS has leaned into its supporter culture to help sell its product in the last 15 years or so? And if you are selling that idea that this is about community, this is about support, this is about passion. It's not that I'm not passionate about the Boston Red Sox, or I'm not passionate about the Denver Broncos. Those are my teams. Or I'm not passionate about some other sports. But soccer is where that word gets thrown around willy-nilly all the time. It's only in soccer that we talk about passion so much. So how can you sell me on the idea of I should have passion for a team you have in my town if there's a chance that if the owner decides he doesn't want to be there or he doesn't like the stadium, he can rip that team out of my town? So Save the Crew, I think, is a cautionary tale. And yes, the Quakes got moved to Houston before the Quakes were replaced in San Jose, right? We've had that happen. We've had clubs fold, 3 of them now in Major League Soccer. I guess you could argue LAFC replaced Chivas. But this is not a look I think MLS wants to engage in. And I don't think, Ryan is writing about it and say, let's talk about how we feel. They wouldn't care. Sacramento wouldn't care. And I hate to be cynical about it, but they would not care.
I think I've asked the commenters in the section of the viewers previously when we've talked about something like this, in Orlando or other cities, Portland, where they did go from USL, or Minnesota, they went from USL to MLS. Do you miss the old USL days? And while obviously there was a small polling here within the show, there was no one that said they missed the USL days at all. And like, would the DCFC, if that MLS reality happened and say like the entity as it is goes away, and even if they rebranded the MLS Detroit that way, like over, would time just make that melt away? Probably not for most. There's probably hardcores that it would never. But.
Sure, there are some people you would leave behind. And by the way, it's fair to say that none of these clubs can be all things to all people, right? So there's unfortunately, there's a lane that you have to pick. Now, I think that, this is also wrapped up in this idea of what do we want our soccer clubs to be? Because if you want your soccer club to be able to play at the highest level of the game, particularly in this part of the world, and we might talk about the Concacaf Champions Cup in a second, well, then you gotta make peace with it being a corporate monster or being attached to a corporate monster and being able to spend the money on players like Son. Right? If you want your team to be beating Cruz Azul in the Concacaf Champions Cup, well, you better be okay with them dropping $25 million on Sun. And if to get $25 million, they got to have some very rich owners, and those very rich owners are going to have some things they want, and the stadium is going to look a certain way. And your access as a fan is going to be limited, meaning to the team itself. But if you don't want that, if you're okay with your team playing 2, 3, 4 levels below that, man, you could have an incredibly intimate experience with your club. You can have an Oakland County experience. You can have a Portland Hearts of Pine experience. You can have I know the players. They're basically my pals. I can go see them in the grocery store. Oh, that guy plays center back. Hey, what's up? You can do that if your team does not play or does not aspire to be this massive success story in both commercially and on the field. But again, you can't be both those things. MLS used to be like that because it was fairly low rent. They weren't spending a lot of money. They were trying to attract players, that really had no other options. And I know super fans of MLS, friends of mine that I've talked to and interacted with on the internet for 20 years, who will tell you it was better when. It was better when I could go up to Shalrie Joseph and say hi. But again, MLS was never going to stand pat. So if you want that, you better be living in a place that has a different kind of team, right? And Sacramento will lose as much as they're, one of the bigger USL championship teams in terms of ambition and stadium capacity, filling up their stadium and all those things. And in a significant town, they're going to lose something if they go MLS. That's 100% a fact.
Yeah, I missed something indeed. Yeah, with every gain, it's almost like a window. Someone at the bottom or at the other end of the spectrum, falls off the table, so to speak. But it's interesting that you said that about OCFC experience. Like, we literally have after parties, and there was a couple games where staff, players, coaches, and fans were all, hanging out and socializing together. And maybe there's a modesty needed in the unusual place that in the culture that soccer finds itself. There's incredible imbalance where some places can, pack 70,000, some can only pack 2,000 or 3,000, and like those both have merit. And maybe some places need to start at that more humble level, and then maybe that's where one of the next developments is that in between level that the League for Clubs and other places are going for. It's places where people have the passion, but maybe not the widespread ability to pack super modern futuristic stadiums. But are we coming to the conclusion, or at least I think it sounds like you are, that you'd say just move on and don't look in the rearview mirror if they are fortuitous at someone else's loss.
No, look,
and would Vancouver try to go somewhere else? Would it exist in a different league or something?
Well, there is a Canadian Premier League team that plays in Vancouver.
Second,
that
Vancouver,
would
right?
not be the Whitecaps. And again, the Whitecaps have one of those kind of standard North American club histories, which is they were a NASL club and then they didn't exist. And there was a team called the 86ers, I think the 80s. And then the Whitecaps came back to play in USL Pro or whatever it was called, the A-League, that history, sort of like the Sounders and the Timbers, right? You're connecting to that past. I imagine somebody would try to find a way to restart the Whitecaps if they left. I don't want them to leave because I don't think moving clubs is ever okay. I do not think that is ever okay. So when you think about Sacramento, like Sacramento can want an MLS team, but they shouldn't get it at the expense of the Vancouver fans. I don't believe that is correct. The relationship between sports fans, and if we want to make it about our particular passion and make soccer a little bit special, fine, soccer fans, it's not a consumer relationship in a traditional way, right? It's not a business selling me a product and I buy it. No, I didn't like this. I'm going to return it to the store. You are asking for my emotional investment as much as you are asking for my money. You are asking me to care about your product in a way that most people don't care about the widget that they bought, right? It's not a blender. It's a soccer team. And if you are going to ask that from me, I ask from you some care for this thing that you are not just an owner of. Yes, on paper, technically, legally, you're an owner. You can do with it what you want within the constructs of the league, understand. But in spirit, that is not the case. That is not the relationship. You are a custodian of something that matters to me. Take care of it for me. And I think Sacramento fans, the smart ones, Ryan, will understand. Like, we shouldn't be doing that. They also still want their team. And again, the cynical part of me is that if it happened in a couple of years, you won't hear anything more about how Sacramento stole a team from Vancouver. But one way of looking at that is, well, we didn't steal them. They had nowhere else to go, and they needed a place, and they came to Sacramento. But then you would get into that whole discussion of like, is the Sacramento Republic a new team in MLS? Or are they a continuation of the Whitecaps? Do they take the records?
Yeah. Do they get completely chopped like San Diego Loyal and then disappear? And the Sacramento Whitecaps. Does that have a ring to it? Probably not.
They're not doing that. They're not doing that. They're
Sacramento Whitecaps would be outrageous. Would be absolutely outrageous. But continue in the comments, guys. If you're watching this afterwards, definitely fill up the comments and questions section. We do check in on those and would love to get your thoughts on that. Is the big question, would you feel any sort of remorse if your lower league team or city without a team even takes or is the benefactor of Vancouver losing their MLS franchise? All right, checking in here. What's our poll for our hot topic? What's a hot topic meter saying?
Guys, I prepared some materials to talk about Colorado's rebranding, but the voters have had their say, Rob, and we are talking Concacaf Champions Cup. So let's reset and dive into what happened last night, what's coming tonight.
All right, let's take a sip of coffee and come back with our hot topic, talking CCC here on MK. Let's go. Midweek Concacaf Champions Cup action is upon us. The headline of Tuesday night's action was a 3-0 win for LAFC over Cruz Azul Sun, with one in the first half to lead off the scoring, and Martinez, the hot 20-year-old, with 2 to add to the 3-0 tally. And my biggest question to me is, can LAFC hold on to that lead down in Mexico?
I thought you were going to say, can they hold on to David Martinez? No, they're not holding on to David Martinez. David Martinez has started the season on fire, and if he keeps
he's above level.
If he keeps this up, they're going to be fielding some significant offers for him in the near future. A Venezuelan player, very exciting, scored 2 goals. They were basically solo efforts. I mean, he was doing Maradona type of stuff. I'm not putting him on Maradona level. I'm just saying he was making those runs, doing things on his own that you don't see a lot of in modern football. Obviously, the Sun goal was a great one as well, moving the ball around the park and ultimately getting in front. Denny Bouanga could have had 1 or 2, but didn't have a shooting boots on. LAFC looked the part last night. They looked like they could be a CONCACAF Champions Cup winner. However, they got to go to Mexico City. They got to play Cruz Azul in their joint. Cruz Azul maybe isn't exactly where they want to be, both in this competition after the first leg or down there in Mexico in Liga MX, in terms of like their overall. They're not leading, but they're second in the table. I guess they're second in the table. We still have 4 matches left in the Clausura, so they have a chance to maybe overtake Chivas at the top. They're going to make the Liga, so they have a chance at a championship. They're the top ranked team in CONCACAF based on CONCACAF's rankings of clubs, which I don't know if you knew that exists, but they did. They're the top ranked team in CONCACAF. So this is impressive. There's always that, but what happens in Mexico? But look, I got accused of being glass half empty earlier when I was talking about being practical and thinking about potential pitfalls. I think they're going to do it. I think LAFC is going to do it. And here's why, Rob. They are sort of built to play in a way that most MLS clubs that go down to Mexico are not. Right? Most MLS clubs are like, well, we'll defend. We'll have to defend our asses off, and we'll bunker, and we'll try to hold on for 90 minutes. And will we provide any danger? Well, not really. We'll just kind of be defending for our lives and try to make the first leg stand up when this happens. But LAFC is extremely dangerous on the break. They are monsters in that transition game. And if you're Cruz Azul, you can't let them have those transition moments, because they will convert one. And in this competition, away goals are a tiebreaker. You give up 1, you got to score 5. You give up 1 goal against LAFC. Now you've got to overcome that away goal tiebreaker. You can't score 4 and move on and get to extra time and penalties. You got to score 5. So LAFC doesn't have to do anything different. They don't have to be aggressive to go get the away goal to break the tie. They can play their normal game. They can be set up in this way with Son, with Bouanga, with David Martinez. They look fantastic. I think they're going to do it against Cruz Azul. I'm not making any promises about the next round against Toluca, who is facing off against the Galaxy tonight.
Speaking to your point about them being really good kind of for this sort of competition, great on the break. So last night in their 3-0 win, they only had 35% of the possession. And speaking to the quality of those goals, their expected goals was just over 1, and they end up with 3. So they really made the most of those specific opportunities. But I bring that up as my lead question is, can they hold on in Mexico? Because the examples of leads lost by MLS teams in Mexico is lengthy. And just this year alone, sorry, FC Cincinnati, but, they ended up turning around a huge scoreline to fall to Tigres already in the previous round. And then you can go back in history. Pumas came back against New England in a 3-0. I remember way back in the day, a 3 or 4 goal lead by Montreal.
Oh, that's the one that comes to mind immediately. That was like watching a besieged town somewhere stave off one of those zombie hordes that's just pouring over the walls. Like, it was intense watching Montreal try to hold on. But Montreal does have some magic in the history of this competition back when it was the Champions League. So you give them credit for that.
Yeah, definitely. And then you were talking about the power of Toluca. They, knocked San Diego out after reversing a 3-2 deficit and routing them 4-0 in the second leg back in Mexico. So there's definitely a storied line for this. But where is your hype meter in general for this competition? I'll ask you that.
Well, I think it is now. It's higher because of what LAFC did last night. They set themselves up. This is what I said on the radio yesterday when I was talking about this with Eric Krakauer. You have to put up a crooked number at home if you're in the first leg. It's got to be a big one. It cannot be 1-0. It cannot win. You cannot do what Nashville did. Nashville's in huge trouble because they were unable to get any goals at home against America. And now they got to go to Mexico City. They got to face up against Club America at altitude with the pollution, with all the thing that comes with playing in Mexico City. They actually did control that game last night. That was their game to take. Sam Surridge couldn't find the net. Obviously, Mukhtar, who I thought caught a couple of pretty wayward shots in that game, was not good enough. They are danger. They're probably going to lose. I don't know if it's going to be a rout in Mexico City, but they will lose. They'll be knocked out, which is sad because I think Nashville is one of the best teams in Major League Soccer. And you have the other two matches today, the other two quarterfinals. So I mentioned Toluca. The difference here is that the Mexican side will host the first leg in these other two matchups. So Toluca will host the Galaxy tonight. And the Galaxy have to be very careful about not letting Toluca put up a big number, right? Maintain control. I don't think they're going to do it because I don't think the Galaxy are that good. And there's really some questions about Greg Vanney's job security right now in Los Angeles, despite the fact he won a championship 2 years ago. They've been bad. And yes, you can always say, well, we don't have Ricky Puig. Well, I'm sorry, buddy. That only goes so far when you're the LA Galaxy manager. And then you have Tigres against Seattle. And I respect the hell out of Seattle. And they can play against the ball, which they're doing more of this year, which may benefit them in Monterrey against Tigres. Tigres are monsters of this competition. I think that will be a battle. I think Seattle can get out of Mexico with a reasonable scoreline. Maybe it's 2-1. Maybe they get a draw. If they score, that's massive, right? You take that away goal with you back to Seattle. So I'm hopeful for Seattle. I have no hope whatsoever for the LA Galaxy. And because of LAFC last night, I'm at least somewhat hopeful that MLS can win this competition this season.
So you're saying Seattle has more of a chance than LA to progress through the quarterfinal. Yeah, that's probably agreeable. And I'm curious for our West Coast viewers, if their hype level is a little higher. It seems like a lot of the CCC games tend to be later on at night and a little bit more of a friendly viewing window for those friends on the West Coast. I was curious if their hype meter was a little hyper out or higher out there. Because, I mean, a lot of the time, a lot of the success stories seem to be on the West-based MLS teams anyways. Recently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the West Coast is buzzing with CCC fever necessarily, Rob, but I do think obviously having the LA teams in helps the general vibes around the tournament. Yeah, Vancouver had a run, but I'm talking about market size. I'm talking about the attention. Like, no offense to Vancouver, but people are like, oh, Vancouver, that's a hockey town, right? In Los Angeles, even LA, even if you don't have everybody supporting LAFC. Lots of people are going to check in on that. Obviously, you're playing against Mexican opposition and a massive Mexican club in Cruz Azul. So you have that as well, which is a draw, right? You know, when we talk about this competition, I have long said this thing isn't really going to matter until MLS starts winning it on a regular basis. It's not going to be really interesting to a lot of people. Even then, I think you can only go so far with crediting the competition as something, you know, great, because there's never going to be a period, right? This is the problem that Concacaf has. And now it's a problem, by the way, that CONMEBOL has, right? Which is the clubs from a couple of places dominate the competition. UEFA's got to be very careful that they don't fall into a trap where one or two domestic leagues are winning every Champions League trophy. And look, Bayern this year, they look like they could go win it. Obviously, we know that Arsenal's having a great season, and you know, maybe Liverpool knocks off PSG, but obviously PSG winning it last year brought another league to the table in the modern era. I mean, I know French clubs have been there before, but this year, this modern era. But in UEFA, you know that a Dutch team's not winning it, a Belgian team's not winning it, a Danish team's not winning it, a Norwegian team's not winning it, no matter what wonderful run they make, right? Bodo Glimt was a great story, but you know they're not winning it. UEFA still, though, does have 3 or 4 different countries, different leagues that are probably going to be able to provide a Champions League winner. In North America, it's Mexico right now, and even if MLS does get its act together and allow its team to build rosters that can compete in this competition, and maybe the calendar switch in 2027 changes the dynamic and allows MLS teams to play on more equal footing with Mexican clubs, even if it's just being traded back and forth between Mexico and MLS, who cares? Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's probably one of the more compelling parts of the calendar change is the ability to compete on a more level playing field between the Mexican and MLS teams moving forward. I agree with you on that.
We just didn't get a period, right? Unfortunately, North American soccer, especially in this era of broadcast television rights and everything is international and everything's accessible and everything is like squeeze for money. We never got a period where we could lay down the lore of, and when it mattered to everybody, right? Of course, yes, there are Costa Ricans who will tell you, yes, Saprissa won this competition when it was called something else back in 1983 or whatever. And they'll talk about that mattering to them. And of course it does. But in terms of America having a top-level domestic outdoor league, Mexico obviously playing high-level soccer, Costa Rica, Honduras. I mean, name your nations. Throw a couple of other. Canada having representation in this tournament, of course. I mean, outside of that, we start talking about countries that are a little too small, but it would be nice, right? It would be great if we had some better representation later in the competition, and that those clubs felt big in the way that every club that's in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League feels big. Everybody was so focused on Europe, and obviously South America did it years and years and years ago with especially Argentine and Brazilian clubs. And that's it. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and there's a lot of lack of continuity, like you said. It's hard to like build tradition when it's being rebranded and reformatted a lot. And there's incursion on that sort of territory with the Leagues Cup as well, being a little bit exclusionary, kind of creeping up on that territory of what that competition serves for everyone. Want to take this time at the end of the show here to thank the MK Ultras, to our brand new members. Shout out to you guys out there. Thank you for supporting the show. If you're not in the position to do that, become an MK Ultra evangelizer. Yeah, tell everyone that you know about this show, especially
being an ultra.
Curious.
Being an ultra requires you to go out and recruit at least 3 new ultras. I mean, we're not going to go actual pyramid scheme, but the spirit of a pyramid scheme, that kind of thing, Rob. Like, recruit some people to be ultras, to be in your upline so that you can feed back into the system. I don't know. I'm kidding. I've consumed way too much anti-MLM content in the last couple of years, so I guess I'm tuned into that.
Yeah, that's totally fair indeed. And in my lengthy job hunt, there was definitely some pitfalls that could have been fallen into there with that sort of arrangement. It's always masked as something else, and then you're like, wait, am I in one of those right now?
Wait, what just happened? Am I selling prepaid legal all of a sudden? What happened? What's going on here?
Yeah, all of a sudden this marketing job is me talking to my friends and family about something.
And now I have to buy 6 boxes of something at $150 a pop, and it's sitting in my garage. What's going on?
Why is this 19-year-old the regional manager of this company?
If Rob starts showing up with waving crystals on camera, we'll know what happened.
Yeah, I'm happy waving my Mr. Bob mug, a hoodless mug. Yeah, if I start pitching something weird or like, hey, do you need to update your cable subscription or something like that? That was one of them.
Look, Bill, I may have misspoke. There's not a good vibe to a pyramid scheme. I just mean go out and find people who might like soccer and tell them about putting Kickaround. That is all I mean. That's all I mean.
Yeah, not that deep. Random note to end with. Did you see this story that instead of he took himself off of the managerial debate list, that Jim Curtin is staying in Philadelphia and he's going to be a technical instructor or a director at the Philadelphia soccer club?
I had no idea that was a thing. That's a man who clearly, I do think he had some ambition at one point, but that's a man who clearly values his Philly lifestyle and living
family
there
time.
and family time and all that stuff and respect. Had some interactions with Jimmy Curtin over the years, haven't talked to him in a while. I don't know, because he's doing that, he's probably not going to be as accessible as like a guy talking about stuff. And he's been on the union payroll for a while since he got fired, so he didn't need to go find something else. So that is interesting. I actually just put his name on a list of potential candidates to replace some managers who are struggling right now in MLS, because of course he looms large out there. Him and Giovanni Savarese and a couple other names. I mean, Oscar Breja, for all that happened in Orlando, isn't the guy that you should stop respecting. So yeah.
All right, we will be back on Friday morning with another live episode of Morning Kickaround. And I think we didn't win the hot topic polling, but I do want to talk about the Rapids on Friday at the very least. We'll throw that in there. But thank you for supporting. Thank you for watching. Stay brave, stay warm if it's cold out there. But until next time, everybody, enjoy your soccer.